While Pikachu may be the face of the franchise, Eevee is coming up on its tail very quickly as one of the most popular Pokemon in all of the Pokemon universe. And this is not just because of how cute and honestly solid Eevee is as a Pokemon by itself, but also due to all the amazing evolutions that Eevee has gotten over the years. There are 8 so far, and we're hoping that there will be more in the future, but we are going to be taking the time on this Pokemon tier list presented by the Game House to be going over some artwork from a very specific person that gave us the rest of the Eeveelutions that we don't have. So we hope that you will be joining us today to go through the tier list of which Eeveelutions we think are not only the best of the ones that haven't come out yet, but also which ones we think are going to be most likely to. But before we dive in, we're going to be asking you guys to leave us a little like and a subscribe so that you're not missing out on any of the other Pokemon content that is coming out on this channel. We do tier lists every Saturday, and if you also have an idea for a certain tier list that you would like to see us do, let us know in the comment sections below, and we'll do our best to acquiesce that request. But let's hop into it here and take a look at the different Eeveelutions that are going to be available to us. When taking a look at making a tier list maker for this specific video, we were just checking to see what was available on tier list maker, and we were able to find something amazing by ort.homeless on Instagram. They had all of the Eeveelutions for all of the different types that we have not gotten so far. We should be showing something relating to them on the video at this point. You should definitely go give them a follow. You should definitely go like their stuff and interact with it because they're doing a great job, not just on the Eeveelutions, but on a lot of other different Pokemon and different ideas. So we wanted to make sure we give them a shout out as well for this. This tier list maker was made by somebody else as well, but it just seemed like it fit perfectly for this video as Eevee Day was just a few days ago from the initial recording of this video. So we're really excited to be using that different artwork and to be getting a look at these different Eeveelutions, and you're going to see them all down here, right? The artist has made a different one for every single typing that's not there, including a mystery typing, which we'll have to look into, discuss a little bit more as we go on here. But you also are going to see just your normal Eevee, Flareon, Jolteon, Vaporeon, Espeon, Umbreon, Glaceon, Leafeon, and Sylveon here. They are not going to be getting ranked in this, right? This is just for the other ones, but we wanted to at least have them here and available as a sort of reference point because the criteria for this tier list is going to be broken down based on design. There's going to be a couple different things within the design category that we'll go over here in a second. Also, it's going to be slightly based on how likely they are to be in the next games, how likely we are to actually get them. At the rate Pokemon is going right now, it'll be like 100 years before we'd actually get every single typing, and if they introduce a new typing, then, well, that's going to be a bit of a kerfuffle, to say the least, and add quite a wrinkle into this, but we are going to be taking into consideration how likely they are to get in. For the design portion of this, it's not going to just be based on the designs, because the artists for these did an incredible job. All of these look fantastic for various different reasons, which we'll be going over. So even if something ends up down here in the F tier, it's not going to be because it's necessarily a bad design. It's going to be because maybe it's not the best design compared to the rest of these, or maybe it's not as realistic of an option, right? We just think that maybe this one isn't as likely to make it in. Again, a lot of this is opinionated. That's why you make a tier list. And also, just the overall comparison to how well it would fit in the line of these already established Eeveelutions, right? A lot of them have, you know, different eyes, different designs, even their facial structures are generally different, but you can tell that they're all Eeveelutions, right? And you can even see, you know, the original 3 have similar eyes. Espeon and Umbreon have different ones, but then they went back to those eyes with the Gen 4 Leafeon and Glaceons, but then Sylveon has its own type of eyes. So it's just all of these different design things that we'll be taking a look at when making our rankings for this, when giving you our considerations for it. you can see first off that this would be the first red Eeveelution, which would be really interesting. And with the bandage design that they have with this Pokemon, it's very intriguing to say the least, because you could totally see this. They've done this for a multitude of other Pokemon where they've had this bandage type look to them, and it gives this one a lot of character. You can see the scar over its eye here, and even the bandage wrapped around its ear that has clearly been in a bit of a tougher fight than maybe some of these other evolutions, especially when you compare it over here to Sylveon. Now, fighting is a popular type, but maybe not the most popular type, and this design does look like it would fit well. I'm just noticing now that the bandages have even been used for the tail, which is very interesting considering for a lot of these Pokemon, the tail is very indicative of what typing they are. So this works extremely well. And to be honest with you, when Sylveon came out, a lot of us thought that there would be something relating to the weaknesses or the super effective strengths that fairy types have. And obviously, you know, fairy type is super effective against fighting types, which means the champion may have a pretty decent chance of getting in. You could tell from the past ones, right, where Umbreon super effective against Espeon, right, and then Glaceon super effective against Leafeon. So like this option definitely feels like a realistic one, and it wouldn't surprise me to see a fighting Pokemon get added, but the only reason that Champion is going to be down here in A is that I don't know if really a fighting type makes enough of a splash in order for this to be something that they would want to add quickly. So Champion is going to go up here at the A, very bottom of A. We may even move it down to B by the end, but we'll have to see. Moving on, we have Draconion, which obviously is a dragon type Pokemon, and this design is absolutely incredible. You can still feel the dragon influence with the horns, the scales, the tail, right? The coloring even for this one. But if we're being honest, this one is maybe not the most favorite of designs. It is very interesting, without a doubt, but it's a bit of a struggle just to imagine this one getting in. It feels like they would make it a little bit more personality driven, right? Similar to how Sylveon was in this game. Maybe it's just at the angle that it's being shown at, right? But this Draconion definitely feels like it just doesn't have necessarily enough. The red and the purples are kind of go together, but it reminds me a little bit more of Druddigon, which is not a bad thing, but when you have epic dragon Pokemon out there, it feels like this one wouldn't necessarily move the scale. That being said, a dragon Pokemon feels like it is extremely likely to make it into this game. And even despite the design concerns, this gets a bump up to S. Like, probably it would have been down here in the B tier, but look, fairy types were made almost essentially to be a counter to dragon Pokemon, and adding a new dragon Pokemon would make not only the biggest splash potentially of all of these different options, but it would make it a really cool late game Pokemon, most likely for you to get, or maybe even one of the early dragons. Like, you could see them going either way with it, and it just feels like a dragon Pokemon is almost guaranteed to be one of the next evolutions for Eevee if they should ever decide to make one. And again, there's the connection with fairy typing being super weak to fairy typing makes this a really interesting choice, and one that we think is going to be up in S tier, despite maybe not it being our favorite design. Next up is Eeveon, which is hilarious. I love the name of this one. Eevee, obviously getting an evolution in its normal typing would be quite the step for Pokemon, not just because it would be maybe its most natural evolution, and it might be one that they would have to set into being a Pokemon that you would evolve based on potentially even like a level evolution, or you know, some other form where it's decided that it's not by a friendship or by a stone or by standing next to something, that maybe this one would just naturally progress at level 35 or 36 or something like that, so that you'd have plenty of time to pick another Eeveelution, but eventually you'd get to Eevon and would actually have to, make that decision to either evolve it into Eevon or try to evolve it into one of these other already established Eeveelutions. Now, this design is absolutely incredible. It feels like it would be a natural progression. The only problem with this one is the eyes. I would have liked to see the eyes stay similarly or more similar to Eevee. Other than that, if they basically add the Eevee eyes, this Eevon would be, well, I even just said Eevon instead of Eeveelution, would be absolutely perfect. This design is truly one of the best ones here. And while it seems like, well, yeah, this is a normal type, it's a little bit boring, it's not. There's a lot of flair to it, and it just fits perfectly. It looks like the natural progression for Eevee. Because of that, it is going to make it up here into A tier. And to be honest, we could totally see them adding this one just because it wouldn't necessarily mess up the progression with any of these other Pokemon or these other Eeveelutions specifically too much. And not only that, then they could add one of the other Pokemon in here, right? They could keep Champion, where if they decide to go with the fighting type Pokemon, it would be super effective against Eevon. And they could also, just do the dragon typing anyways and allow Eevon to still be in the game, as it wouldn't affect necessarily the super effectiveness of either of the Pokemon. So maybe not the most inspired choice, but still a very interesting one, and one that I think a lot of people would be excited about, as well as normal seems to be one that we've seen over on Reddit, Twitter, everywhere, that could most likely be added. Continuing on, we have Guardian here, the steel Pokemon, which looks absolutely outstanding. Its freaking tail is a sword. Could you really ask for more? It's wearing a helmet, it's wearing a suit of armor. The coloring is perfect for steel type. And not just that, but again, the eyes are such a big deal in these Pokemon, and it feels like these eyes fit in perfectly. Add into the fact that Guardian would naturally be super effective against Steel-type Pokemon here, or against Fairy-type Pokemon, and this one just feels like a natural Pokemon to be added on this list. And because of that, it's going straight up into the S tier. We would love to spend more time on it, but it feels like, honestly, we're putting it up at the top. It feels like maybe, oh no, wait, what's going on? Move, there we go. Okay, it feels like this Pokemon would fit in perfectly. And not just that, but it would also be fitting in because of the Gen 2 edition, right? Steel Pokemon got added in Gen 2 along with Dark types, and realistically and unfortunately, they only ended up picking the one, probably because Psychic typing was so important, right? And Umbreon is one of the best defensive Pokemon, or one of the best defensive, if not the best defensive Eeveelution of this group. Sylveon maybe being a close second, but not just that, giving a new defensive option for, Eeveelution trainers, but also Guardian would just make sense to really fit that hole that got skipped, as Steel types unfortunately got almost ignored during all of this, as they ended up adding Fairy types later instead. A lot of people really thought Steel type was eventually coming, as Dark typing got added along with its generation. So this would make up for it quite a bit, and it would be a very nice addition to the Eeveelutions, and one that I think a lot of people would really, really enjoy. Continuing on here, we have Lepidion. Lepidion is interesting. It definitely looks like a bug. It almost looks like a bee at different sorts, right? With its different, the way that its legs looks like stingers, right? The eyes look very bug-like, which is great. It's got like these almost moth ears, antennae, which work extremely well. You've got I think that's the thorax, right? Maybe. I'm sorry, I'm not much of a bug person, but the design is awesome. The pink and yellow work really, really well together. And if we're being honest, bug typing is a typing that doesn't get a lot of love, right? It's a Pokemon type that seemingly is constantly forgotten about. It is one that maybe is not given the best advantages, the best moves, all of this sort of thing. It's why people do Nuzlocke with bug Pokemon, because it's arguably the hardest typing, and it has so many different weaknesses, and it just feels like this would be a really cool Pokemon to get added. Now, would it get people excited? Maybe. There are a lot of people who love Bug-type Pokemon, but this one, based on the design, based on how likely it would be that people would actually be interested in it, we're going to go here in the B tier. Again, bug types need a little extra love. This would be a really good way to do it for all the fans of Eevee, not only to give them a new option, but to give bug-type Pokemon trainers a very potentially signature type of Pokemon. And again, the design is really well done. B tier seems like a good spot for it. We move on to Nimbion, which obviously a Nimbus cloud. And this is a really cute design just based on the clouds, the wings for ears, right? The pink feels gratuitous maybe, but considering, you know, Eeveelutions are very much supposed to be cute, that would kind of work, and pink is considered to be more of a cute color, right? This could work for sure, but it is definitely not one of our favorite designs. It feels like this one is, I don't know, lacking something that could have been added, and it feels like it wouldn't really fit in as well with the rest of these Pokemon. It's not that the design isn't solid, but it just feels a little too off compared to the rest of these ones. Also, when you look at flying type Pokemon, let's be honest, they don't really need to add more of them. This flying type Eevee wouldn't really fit necessarily with the other typings of these evolutions, right? It would have a lot of different problems with, you know, Jolteon and Glaceon in specifics, and it would only really be super effective against Lepidion, so it's just not necessarily one that we could see getting added. Again, the design is fantastic, and every single one of these are at least B tier or above based on design, but the likelihood of this one getting in is almost nil, and it wouldn't make a lot of people very excited, most likely, as flying is not necessarily one of the most popular, but it is one of the more common typings, so we're going to put it down here as our first official F tier. This one, again, I knew specifically, but we knew at the Game House that a lot of people would be upset with some of these rankings, and that maybe putting any of them in the F tier would be a problem. But look, there's only 11 if you count this Varon options up here, right? And, well, wait, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, okay, 11 with Varon. But just putting it down here in the F tier just seems, yeah, unlikely, to say the least, right? And we're sorry if you're upset about it. We're moving on, though, to Obsidian, the rock type Eeveelution, and there is no doubt that this design is absolutely fantastic. The reason why is that so often there's some sort of brown type, right? Or some sort of brown design or a variation of a brown or a tan for a lot of different rock Pokemon. And there are still different ones, right? You've got some of the more, you know, ancient designs and the fossil Pokemon, right, that have these different, you know, multitudes of colors. But this strictly non-fossil rock-type Pokemon has such an awesome, unique, sleek black design with the crags, the rocks coming off of its shoulder blades, and the tail. The eyes fit in so well with it, and just the placement even of these rocks works so well in this design. And the biggest problem, the thing that is holding this one back potentially the most, is the fact that it's not necessarily super strong against much, right? Obviously, the ice typing is going to be, you know, the big one that people would be pointing out at it, and one that would really be very effective, you know, against Glaceon, right? But it's just that it's not necessarily going to be one that a lot of people are really going to be clamoring for. It's not going to be one that people are going to be really looking for in terms of like a rock type Pokemon really making people excited. The design alone obviously would put this potentially up into the A tier, but just the fact that a rock Pokemon, just a rock Eeveelution specifically, just doesn't seem like it would be making its way into the games, makes it down here in our C tier list. But do know that I personally and other people at the Game House would have loved to have moved this one up a little bit higher. Now we're on to Omon, which the name is absolutely perfect. And Omen, right, is really, really cool. And the design on this one is potentially the thing that is holding it back the most, if we're being completely honest with ourselves, because it's not that it's necessarily a bad typing. It's just more that it just, well, we shouldn't even say typing. Sorry, scratch that. It's not necessarily a bad design. It would be very unique, but there's just not a lot going on. Just adding the skull to Omon and the little bit of a wisp seemingly on the tail just isn't doing enough. And look, even Espeon, who is truly one of the lesser inspired designs of all of these other Pokemon, right? There's so many other options with a lot more personality and a lot more obvious nature to what they are compared to Espeon. But even this seemingly has a bit more of a design, of a feeling of it being a little just more detailed, I guess, is the way that I'm going to put it. Omon just doesn't have enough, especially compared to all of these other options that you could pick from. That being said, ghost typing is very popular, and one that really doesn't have, obviously, a lot of weaknesses, just to dark and to ghost typing, and it would be a really cool Eevee to get added into this game. The problem is, again, it's just it's just not the best design, and because of that, it's gonna go down here in the B tier. It's gonna be at the top of the B tier because, again, a ghost type Eevee would be awesome, and it could totally get added into one of these games and everybody would be very excited, but the design specifically of this one is holding it back just a little bit. We've got just 3 more left, and we're going to be heading into the poison typing with Scorpion. And look, this design is absolutely fantastic. It's vibrant, it's bright, right? You can feel the ooze, the toxicity coming up from its feet. It's very spiky, like you would expect a poison type to be, and the name Scorpion, right? It's got the tail, right? It's got the pointed end, the dagger at the end of this tail, right? And Poison Point being its ability, while we haven't really looked at those, does fit very perfectly with Scorpion. So this is a wonderful design, to say the least. The only problem is that it feels like it might be almost a little too much for the rest of these different Eeveelutions, right? It would stand out pretty substantially, actually. The thing is that maybe the color would need to be toned down a little bit, or maybe if they even flip-flopped right where the purple and the pink are, that might allow it to be a little bit more similar in nature to the other Eevees, because while they all stand out in different ways, right, color is not necessarily where it's too vibrant. Even for Sylveon, which was our first fairy type Eeveelution, right, the pink does not necessarily go as bold as this Scorpion does. So we're going to have to take a little bit away from that in terms of its possibility. But that being said, poison typing would make a ton of sense, obviously, into the fairy typing. And it would really give poison typing another new, very strong option for that typing. Something that people would really, I think, be drawn to. And not just that, it feels like something that Pokemon would want to add, and a lot of people would be pretty excited about, just again because of the fact that it would be maybe a signature type Pokemon for the poison typing. And because of that, it's going to go back here at the very end of S tier, right? If you can't tell, a lot of these have to do with Sylveon. I myself and others at Gamehouse really do believe that one of these new Eeveelutions, should they come out, are going to have something to do with Sylveon. And, you know, the fact that these are the different Pokemon that are, you know, obviously Fairy is super effective against Dragon and super affected by Steel and Poison, make this a very easy choice. We would obviously consider Dark Pokemon, but hey, look, Umbreon's already here. Not much more we can do with that one. So Scorpion makes it here to the bottom of S tier, only because Steel and Dragon would most likely be the, you know, most likely to be added, and the most excited that we think people would get. So the last one that actually has a type Is Sphinxon a ground type? Now, I will say I've seen a lot of different ground type variations. This one would be very unique. It would be a really interesting callback to, obviously, the ancient Egyptians, and look, it's not that couldn't happen, right? There are a lot of different Pokemon that have, mummies, with Confragragus and all of these other different types of Pokemon that fit certain aesthetics, right? Even Guardian, right, with the more European knight look to it. So Sphinxon could absolutely be something that they would get added, and having it as a ground type would be fantastic. And let's be real, ground typing is another typing that is often forgotten about, and one that would really and truly be a very interesting addition, as it would be the only one that's really super effective against Jolteon. Obviously, that's not necessarily the most important part, and if it were to be added, right, Glaceon, Lepidion, and Vaporeon would all be super effective against it, which, maybe is not the biggest deal necessarily when they add some of these, and it would have no connection to Sylveon whatsoever. But man, this design is potentially the best one. It's just such a unique design. It is such a fun design. It seems like it would fit really, really well with these, even if they maybe took some of the blue out maybe and made it a little bit more of like a yellow focus. But regardless, this Sphinxon would be an awesome addition, and because of that, it's going to go down here at the bottom of A tier. The design really pushing it up there, even though we're not super sure that this one would get added, just going to be honest. But it's a fantastic look, it's a fantastic design, and it needs to be given a chance here in the A tier. Now, lastly, we've got Varon, which is really cool. It has no typing, it looks like, right? And we've gotten that before with different Pokemon, more, recently in Scarlet and Violet with the legendary turtle Pokemon, whose name for some reason is escaping me at the moment. I want to keep calling it Torterra for some reason, even though I know that is obviously a starter Pokemon. But regardless, Varon would be interesting, and this one feels like it may even be a better option as a normal type Pokemon that has some sort of new ability where it could change its typing. Now, from what I can tell, this was made before Scarlet and Violet, so terrestrializing wasn't in the game. The ability to change your type through the game was not available to it, but imagine a normal type Varon that has something similar to what that mythic, legendary, whatever Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet has, to where you can change its typing, and this would be the ultimate outcome for an Eevee. And it's an incredible design, to say the least, right? The gray and the white work so well together. The little gem in its head that is rainbow, the multicolor as well. And this thing looks, ferocious. It looks furious, right? And there's just something about that ability to do that. And then also, if it just kind of changes its eyes, it could look very cute, right? Like, there's just a lot of different options that could happen with this Varon, thus the name Varon. And this was a really hard one to rank, honestly. This was not necessarily a bad choice, and you guys are probably going to think that we're copping out here, but we're going to put it here in the B tier. We're going to put it above Bug, because this would send a message, right? This would be a very interesting Pokemon to get added to the game, to say the least, but it would really make Eevee very important. And it's not that that's not possible. We saw in the Terra leaks, right, that they wanted to make sure that whenever they added another Eeveelution, that it would be important, right? That it would potentially even be maybe the main star of either the game or a game in some capacity or another. If they added a Pokemon like Varon, that would be the case. That would make it a very important Pokemon within the game. It would probably be a major part of the storyline, and it may have been something that they could have considered for Scarlet and Violet. The problem is, though, is that we've already gotten those games out. It has not happened, so the design alone and the idea behind it would be amazing, and that would put it up into the S tier along with the design and everything else. But the likelihood of this one coming out is almost F tier. So Probably is F tier, to be honest. I think it's just obviously much less likely than even Nimbion. So this is going to finalize our rankings. Let us know how we did. This is probably going to be a pretty controversial one, and I'll just say it out loud. I'm ready for it. Bring it on. Like, I hope you guys will, really let us know what you think of it. Where did we mess up? Should these be ranked higher or lower in different areas? Do you love these designs? Are there other Eeveelution designs that people have done that you really like? Point all of that out to us in the comments section below. Also, make sure to like and subscribe. Obviously, that means a lot, and we're going to be continually coming out with more Pokemon content, as we said. This is one of our Saturday tier lists. You can check us out every single Saturday, and we will have a new one out there for you. So we really hope that you guys will let us know, and hopefully you guys are enjoying these. But that's going to wrap it up for us on this tier list. So with that, I'll catch you on the next one.